Now to Texas, where state House Republicans there have passed a new voting bill, which critics say restricts access to the ballot in the second largest state in the country. If passed by the state Senate, Texas would become the 10th state in the nation to enact legislation that restricts voting since the 2020 election, according to the nonpartisan Brennan Center. State Representative Jessica González, the Democratic vice chair of the Texas House Elections Committee, challenged Republicans last night on why voting changes are needed after the Secretary of State's office described Texas elections as free, fair, and secure. Take a listen.
It's expanding participation. More people are going to be able to vote as a result of this bill.
Yeah, we're protecting voters to ensure that no one's taken advantage of. Yeah.
How is that increasing participation? By adding more restrictions and criminalizing minor things, mistakes that somebody could make.
I don't think this bill at all criminalizes minor mistakes. No.
And Representative González joins me now. Thank you so much for being with us. Democrats have argued that the proposed changes would disproportionately affect minority voters. You've gone as far as calling this old Jim Crow dressed up as election integrity, but the amendment process last night watered down some of the most controversial provisions, such as potential criminal penalties related to mistakes in voting. So what's still in this bill that you consider on the level of Jim Crow?
Well, despite the changes that were made on the bill last night, this bill is entirely unnecessary, and it's a hateful piece of legislation that is bad for the state of Texas, and it will discriminate against minority voters and election officials. And despite that, and they refused to add anything to the bill that would make it easier or safer for Texans to vote.
And as you know, the Texas State Senate and House had different bills with the GOP Senate measure, including issues like restrictions on ballot drop boxes and early voting rules, limiting extended voting hours, and banning drive-through voting. If those measures are no longer on track to be included in the final bill, do you consider that somewhat of a victory?
Yes. Although the bill will still have to go into conference committee, and there's always a possibility that there will be attempts to add those provisions back on the bill. And so, we'll have to, if that happens, we'll have to challenge that and fight back. Because, even with the minor changes that were made, last night, this bill, it's still too restrictive, as far, when it comes to voter assistance and with many other provisions in there that simply, will just disproportionately impact people of color.
And as you know, there was plenty of activism that grew out of the voting laws enacted in Georgia, and some businesses did come out in opposition to changes to voting in Texas as they did in Georgia. Are there any stronger steps you'd like to see corporations take now to try to keep this bill from moving forward?
Yeah, we would love it if more businesses, stepped up and voiced their opposition to this bill. These businesses that have, that stepped up and formed this coalition, contradicting or, opposing this bill, did that simply because they know the importance of embracing diversity and inclusiveness, right? And they know that their employees, their voice deserves to be heard just like everybody else.
And I know you believe this will hurt access to the ballot box, but do you anticipate a counter reaction from voters if this legislation becomes law? Meaning, could some Democrats actually be more motivated to cast their ballots in the next elections despite the hurdles that you've described?
Well, that's the hope, right? That's what we have to aim for. If, people need to understand what these new changes are, and also understand what the potential criminal penalties that there may be attached to, certain activity that in the past didn't have these penalties associated with them. And it's going to make, also very hard for counties to be able to hire election workers. And it's already difficult for counties to fill these positions. And so this bill is going to make it even harder because people are going to be afraid that they're going to accidentally commit a crime. And, so it's going to be important for us to message that to the people and let them know. And, and hopefully it'll motivate them to go vote and change whoever is a representative.
And this is certainly not over. That bill now goes to the Senate, as we've mentioned, and then conference committee to finalize, as you mentioned. Still a while from it being finalized. We, of course, will see what happens between now and then. Thank you so much for joining us, Texas House Representative Jessica González. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.